Hello, I'm Jackie Barry, and I first met Barbara Moynihan at one of the PSA online events, or a few of them probably, and we got chatting about how important it was to engage your audience when you're doing a session, whether it's online or offline. And in the middle of our conversation, I said, stop, we need to capture this conversation in one of the videos for the blog and the newsletter and the Facebook page that go along with my experiential speaking book. So I'm delighted we've managed to get this one booked in. Hello, Barbara.
Hello, Jackie.
Barbara is from an organisation called onyourfeet.ie, based in Dublin and with clients in Ireland and across the UK and probably beyond, founded in 2010. And one of the things that they focus on is presenting for pitches and persuasion, helping people overcome their fear of public speaking. Have I got that right?
Yes, I'm giving straightforward presentations. Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's good to know. And let's pick up where we left off then, which was about the importance of engaging an audience, especially online. Well, what are your views on that with all your years of experience?
Well, look, I think it's important whether you're online, offline, to engage your audience, as you know yourself, Jackie, as well. But one of the key things when I started out as a trainer, I was really, really lucky because the company that I worked with at the time, they gave us one sentence that I figured if everybody stuck to, all training would be far more engaging. Would you like to share it?
Oh, go on. What's that?
Okay, so it was never tell them anything that they can tell themselves. Ooh. Never tell them anything they can tell themselves. So basically, it's all about, I call myself a facilitator more than a trainer, because all you're doing is finding out what they know and you fill in the blanks. And whether you do that virtually or face-to-face, it's engaging.
That's another good line. Find out what they know and fill in the blanks. That means you're starting with them first.
Definitely. But that's what it's all about. You know, if you don't look after them, then if you're just giving them, this is the material I have, I'm just going to plop it at them, as opposed to finding out, you know, and always at the beginning, obviously finding out where they're coming from, what their challenges are, what they're hoping to get from the program, etc., etc. And we do all of that actually via questionnaire beforehand. Yeah. So it saves a bit of time on the day. And we do revisit, obviously, at the beginning, what are their challenges, just to bring that to the forefront. But yeah, it has to be all about them. Can't be standard.
I do the same. I do a pre-course questionnaire for one of my regular courses, and I've delivered this course nearly 100 times. So actually the content doesn't change that much because the answers to the questionnaire are pretty much the same every time. And I know what it is they're likely to want. Apart from, there's a few outlying points that sometimes get raised that we can also address. So the benefit to them also is they feel the whole session's been tailored for them because you've answered and asked the questions, and you haven't just made up what you think they need to know. You're responding to what they've asked you for.
Yeah, exactly. But we also ask them the types of presentations they're delivering, who they're to, how often. So again, if we've got a group of 8, like I had a group last week, and some of them are presenting daily, weekly, monthly, annually. So again, at the beginning, you can say, look, I know some of you are presenting daily, weekly, monthly, annually. They know that I know who they are, because I think there's nothing worse than being, whether it's an audience member at a conference or part of a training course, and you feel that person who's up there doesn't actually know anything about me or us as a group, and they're just completely missing the point.
You can get people in your audience who are as expert as you or experienced already. One of the things I did was get a group to rename themselves on Zoom, adding the number of years experience they had in front of their name, and then I could instantly see who was experienced and who was an absolute beginner. And when I put them in breakout groups, I could mix them up and make sure you had a nice mix of experience in each group.
Great. And you know what, the number of people who don't realize that they can rename themselves, or that you can rename them. Yeah, I've used that as well. So even in the presentations training, if a person is focusing on a particular thing, I get them to change the name now to Jackie, vocal variety, or, you know, Mary, engagement, whatever. So straight away, I know they're reminded and everybody else in the room knows what they're focusing on. So the rename is brilliant, isn't it?
And renaming the rooms themselves was something I tried quite recently, where people could choose which room they wanted to go in because they were named by topic, and therefore they weren't just randomly assigned. They could jump about and talk about what it was that they wanted to talk about in each different room.
Yeah, and again, renaming the rooms is a bit of fun as well, especially if you call them, I don't know, names of rivers, names of pop stars, just anything that's a bit of excitement, difference, as opposed to just a humdrum.
One of mine was called Random Chit Chat. That was quite a popular room.
What do you do if everybody's in random chit chat and nobody's in serious business?
So what techniques have you got then, in addition to the pre-course questionnaire, about putting the emphasis on the audience before you get started in a session?
So before we get started, well, even before we give the individual questionnaires, we actually send out a discovery document to the organizer of the program, because every different group has different needs. So again, we know about them as a group, we know about them as individuals. We also give them some pre-work beforehand, nothing too heavy, because in our experience, if you give them heavy work, they're just not going to do it. So we get them to look at a few videos, which then we discuss just at various parts in the program. So they've already got a bit of the learning beforehand. Do you know what I mean? In terms of they've already started to think about what we're going to be looking at. And then afterwards as well, one of the things that we did with COVID was we set up a client-only area on the website, which we didn't have beforehand. So what we did was all our resources we normally email to them, we just put them in one area of the website, and we keep adding all the time. So they're getting value before, during, and afterwards. That's been really useful, not only in terms of all the learning, but in terms of keeping the value at what it was. But during the program, obviously very early on, we get them into breakout rooms. You know, I think that breaks the ice. People like being in there. We, as I alluded to already, we ask a lot of questions. And then one of the things that we've started to do recently is, and this came out of a course that I did in December. I did a couple of training programs in the virtual training world last year, and I did one in Canada. And two of the great things that came out of that was the facilitator was a super guy. And he suggested, you know, the way sometimes you might say, just take down some notes and have a bit of reflection time on, you know, some of your takeaways so far. He suggested to regularly ask them to turn off their camera. So particularly for the introverts or the reflectors, it means they don't feel like they're on show. So allow them to turn off the camera, because anything you do, it shouldn't just be a gimmick. It needs to be linked. And I'll talk at one stage, then I'll say, you know, about the music we were playing. If you play music that puts you in a, you know, upbeat mood, that's going to help you if you've got to go into a meeting virtually or face to face and you need to be upbeat. If you're a bit and you need to calm down, just putting on a bit of the classical music or music, you know, so you can use music to put you into the zone that you need to be.
And surprising an online audience, I think, is another good trick. Anything unexpected, because they're so used to just sitting passively and listening, that the more you make it about them and involve them, and when there's a purpose and a reason and it makes sense to them,
yes,
they're more likely to listen and give you their attention, aren't they?
Definitely. Like, we learn by doing. It's not by sitting and listening.
So why do you think so many professional speakers don't do any kind of online engagement?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I think from day one, when I started out as a trainer in the soft skills in 2001, it was just drummed in, get them doing. So like, obviously it's presentation skills training. We're lucky because we get them presenting 4 times during a one-day program. That's planned, 4 planned times briefly. So they're all the time doing, and in the breakout rooms, the volunteer speakers, you know, all the usual kind of thing. I just wonder if some speakers are more subject matter experts than trainers. So like, I started my training career, gosh, nearly 30 years ago as an IT trainer. So maybe I've just always been in that mode of training / facilitating, as opposed to having been somebody who worked in marketing for many years, knows it inside out, and now is looking to share my knowledge, as opposed to somebody who was used to getting thoughts and ideas and insights from your head into their minds and getting them doing what it is they need to be doing. Does that make sense?
It is a different mentality, isn't it? Training and speaking. But it strikes me that perhaps speaking is more about why to do something or what to do, and training's more about how to do it. And that means the person has to practice, and then they have to be assessed in some way to make sure that that learning transfer has occurred.
Yeah, but I think as a speaker, they can certainly give pointers on how to do things, but you're right. And even the word speaker versus the word facilitator. So facilitator is facilitating the discussion so the learning can happen. A speaker is speaking to share their knowledge, but it's really hard to keep the attention, especially if it's anything longer than 20 minutes. I mean, TED Talks, the maximum length of time for a TED Talk is 18 minutes for a reason. Obviously, there's research done and they've decided that that's the maximum amount of time that you can keep the attention for. So having a 45-minute speaker, it's really difficult, unless you're massively engaging in terms of your delivery. If you're not having them participate in some shape or form, either virtual or face-to-face, I think it's really challenging to hold the attention the whole time.
And that's something else I was going to ask you actually about the length of a program that you deliver as a trainer. You mentioned full day. Are you doing, like I am, full day online, or are you breaking it up into more bite-sized bits?
Good question, Jackie. Now, I'm not saying your other questions were good. When I did my first virtual facilitation program last year, I was told you cannot have a program longer than 2 hours. I have done just recently, and the client wanted it 2 consecutive days. I said to him, look, I think it's going to be really challenging for them, to be online, listening for the full 2 days. Anyway, with calendars and schedules, it just worked for them. And they all said at the end of it, they felt that the 2 days had just flown. Why? Because it's all full of polls, breakout rooms, use the chat, use the annotator to do a presentation, debrief the presentation. So I think if you keep it really active, there is a mindset that they cannot take in for more than 2 hours. I'd have to disagree. I think if it's engaging enough, and if they're doing, certainly with what I train on, I think you can have a consecutive 2-day program.
I'm with you on that. I've had to do a full day with attendees from Australia or the Far East, where it's ended 5 o'clock UK time, which has been the middle of the night for the people on the other side of the world. And I was very proud that I managed to keep them awake until 1 and 2 in the morning. And they were only yawning in the last half hour. But it was the secret, as you've said, was getting them to do something very regularly rather than just passively sit and take in information.
Yeah, and even 2-minute breaks, we've them now splattered throughout the time. And again, if I look and I see they look a bit tired, I'll say, take 2 minutes, go out and pet your dog, stick your head out your front door, get a gasp of fresh air, do a burpee, dance around your kitchen, whatever it is, just for 2 minutes, just to get the energy back. And we'll get them standing at times as well, just so that they're up and out of the seat and moving around.
Yeah, that's another of the key principles, I think, is to mix the physical and the virtual world. So to get them moving about so they can just stretch their legs from sitting in the same place all day long.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's much healthier. Right. Your story made me wonder actually whether my route into audience participation came from actually not wanting to be in the spotlight on stage and making it more about the audience, so that as more of an introvert or a shy person, the attention wasn't on me. So do you think there might be something in that when it comes to the confidence of your average public speaker? It just floated across my mind that these audience participation activities could be not just benefiting the audience, but benefiting the speaker as well.
Definitely, because now it does take more work for you to plan exercise, and again with timings, know how long it's going to take. It takes a lot more effort initially to develop a program that has a lot of interactivity. But at the end of the day, the more you've got them doing, it does take a bit of the focus off you. I suppose in your case, maybe it does make it easier that it's them that's doing the work. But for any facilitator, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, them doing is them learning. Actually, I listened to your interview with Susan Armstrong, which was really good. But again, she was talking about the different learning styles. And sometimes people will tend to, actually, I'll give you an analogy. I was buying a beetroot salad. So this sounds a bit random, but anyway, I was buying a beetroot salad in a coffee shop. It was the last bit, it was beetroot and almond. Anyway, the girl was picking out all the beetroot and leaving behind the almond. And I was saying to her, will you give me the almond because I love it? Oh, she said, I was leaving behind because I don't like it. And I was thinking, you're not the one who's going to be eating it. So it's the same thing as trainers, to try and forget about your own style, but try and address the styles and, like you're saying, vary things up to appeal to everybody and making sure that the learning lands.
Yes, mixing it up, I think, is one of the ways of injecting this element of variety and surprise and keeping the engagement up. But I suppose what I was saying with my angle on, perhaps it's to do with the presenter's own style, it's also the opposite of the presenter having ego, isn't it?
Oh yeah, don't get me started. Yeah, because it's not about how much I know as a presenter. I certainly don't know everything, and I always make that clear. Listen, I don't know. Every day is a school day, but there's things that I do know that I'll share with you, even in terms of the language that you use. So I'll always recommend to people, try and have 2 U's for every I. If you find that you're using a lot of I's, then it's you just talking about yourself. And sometimes you can, because you get so comfortable with the group or you're really enjoying it, but it's really important to remember to so much less I and more about you, more about them.
I say exactly the same when I'm training in copywriting skills. You need 2 or 3 times the number of you and your compared with the company name, or what I call top-down language, I, us, we, our.
I suppose another thing as well then to keep the engagement is stop sharing the slides all the time. So people will share a slide and they'll be talking about something, maybe the group has gone on a little bit of a sidebar, but they're still sharing the slide. Wherever you can, stop sharing the slide so that you're not just, a little square in the corner, and then it's more personable as opposed to just looking at a PowerPoint on the screen.
But what are your favourite activities? Have you got some reliable go-to things that you do that just work?
I like randomly popping up a poll that I hadn't planned, which might sound very naughty. So we use a template for all our training in Zoom, and all the polls are built in to the template. I have a few polls in there that are generic polls, like per question asked, yes or no. Per question asked, yes, no, don't know. So it means at any point in time, I can ask them a question and just pop up the poll. So for example, I had a guy last week, and it was funny because at the beginning we always talk about balanced participation, and I ask, usually there's somebody kind of goes, makes face, and I said, what do you think we mean by that? And it's about not one person taking over, but everybody participating more or less equally. And I'd say, exactly. So there was one guy at the beginning who's saying, oh my gosh, I'm going to be that person who over participates. Anyway, he kept asking questions all the time where really it mightn't have been relevant. So kind of as a joke, he said, can I ask a question? I'm going to say, hold that there. I'm just going to launch a poll. Can Simon ask a question? Please answer yes or no. It was really funny. So they all clicked no. It's gone. Sorry about that. But that's just an example. So having those planning, but just going with something if it feels right. So that's something that I do like to do. I love the annotate tool. I don't know why more people don't use it. I don't think they even know it's there. Putting them into breakout rooms, coming back, I draw a whiteboard with 4 quadrants from the 4 breakout rooms. They can click in each quadrant and type in their findings, rather than me saying, what did you find in room 1 and room 2? And it's just me talking. So yeah, the annotate tool and the random polls would be my favorite too.
Great techniques there. One of my tips would be, well, get the audience doing things, and then it's not all about you. But what would one of your best tips be about overcoming fear of public speaking?
The key thing is people are afraid of doing it badly. I think that's the thing, that they want to do it and they want to do it right. And what I try and do, one of the things is put in context. If you did a bad presentation, would you lose your job? Highly unlikely. If you did a bad presentation as a business owner, you might lose a bit of face. You mightn't get win the pitch. But at the end of the day, I would say to people, your family will still love you. Your friends will still love you. The sun will still rise. The sun will still set. The world will go on. It's just a presentation. And that would be one of the key ones. Can I give one more one?
Mm-hmm.
Don't call it a presentation. Call it a conversation. Because people don't mind chatting to people, but it's when they hear the word presentation, and then use some of the techniques to make it more conversational. And as you and I are both saying, they're using the word you more, as opposed to I'm here presenting, but I'm here if I take on a different persona that I'm just chatting with you.
Well said, Barbara, thank you. And where can people go if they want to find out more about you?
They can go to onyourfeet.ie, or obviously I'm on LinkedIn myself. I share tips and tools, tricks every single day, and it's Barbara Moynihan.